What is up, guys? This is Brad with Display Fitness, hanging out with John, doing some training talks with Coach John. I've had a few things where I've asked for some questions and things like that, so I've collected a few questions over the past couple of days because it's kind of hard for him and I to get together. Sometimes it doesn't always work timing-wise. So got a question that came through, and individual wants to know suggestions for press and or bench press training while recovering from an AC joint injury. And just so that you guys are, whoa, that's not what we want. Just so you guys are tracking, the AC joint is the acromyoclavicular joint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's out here in the shoulder. Okay, so on you, what do you think? Bench press training whilst recovering from AC joint injury / issues.
It really depends on the issue. So if it's just a chronic issue that's just been bothering you due to an inflammation, it's going to be different than an acute injury where you might have separated that joint and it's recovering from that. But either way, we'll go ahead and assume that's roughly the same and you've just had an issue with it and it's painful and you want to get back into pressing. So I think the best way to do that is, first we're going to try to achieve range of motion. So the bottom end range of motion, irrespective of the pressing angle, is going to be the toughest on that. So my first recommendation would be to find the biggest range of motion you can start from, whether it be press off the pens, or working off the board, floor press, something like that, or implementing like a slingshot bench to deload the shoulder at the bottom end range. Bars are going to be more rough than dumbbells would be typically, just in the stretch pattern. Once you get a little bit comfortable with that pressing motion, oftentimes people like to swap up bars and do different variations of lifts for deadlifts and squats, but I think bench is a little more overlooked in terms of that, but that might be something to play with too. Neutral grip, even like a little reverse grip. We were talking to one of the other guys on staff, and we were talking about figuring out, oftentimes if you press here and you have pain, if you turn it around, not make that a mainstay, but you can take away some pain that way. So I would probably mess with a bar or hand position or a combination thereof, and then slowly work my way back towards a regular press, especially if we're trying to get back into competition. Your end goal is going to be that competition bench or whatever. I feel like athletics or performance based is a little bit different because we aren't stuck to a bar necessarily. So we can be a little bit looser and probably stay, on a variation or a limited range of motion a little bit more. And then I think I would spend that time, because you're obviously going to have to decrease the volume in pressing and just really overload, the pull and the back end a little bit more, and just try to because the stronger you can support the pressing muscle, the easier it's going to be from a recovery standpoint. And obviously you keep making your press stronger and you strengthen the support muscles, that's just going to be stronger at the end of the day anyway. So that's kind of my take on that in very short term.
Yeah, the AC issues or joint issues just in general can be very problematic, kind of nag on you for a while, and certainly can be very mentally kind of debilitating when trying to approach training with having that issue. One thing I'll say is I have noticed in my own training, my own life, that sometimes when I feel like I have a shoulder issue, what happens to me is I get some kind of impingement in my neck. So in kind of the upper thoracic, lower cervical, portion of my spine, sometimes I get a nerve pinch, and that will manifest itself as shoulder pain. That happens to me frequently. So you may benefit from approaching a chiropractor and having a look at your back to make sure that everything is in proper alignment, because it makes sense. The spinal cord controls everything. Nerves run out from the spinal cord. If you get an impingement somewhere along that route, is going to have negative effects somewhere. So I know that, like I said, when I have issues in my shoulders, a lot of times it's actually a neck issue versus a shoulder issue. So consider that. Also, kind of like John said, when looking at the AC joint issue, I would also very strongly consider those antagonistic muscles, working, the opposing movement. So apart from the press, work on that kind of row. One thing that's really good for just shoulder health and shoulder stability, bands or cables doing face pulls. right? That's usually a really good way to kind of warm up the shoulder, work the opposing muscles, just have overall shoulder balance. I know that there are many guys, many gals that have had shoulder issues due to imbalances, working way too much on the press and not giving enough consideration for those antagonistic muscles. So that also may be something that is exacerbating the problem if it wasn't some kind of an acute injury, moment of trauma kind of a thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that you may want to consider too that might help out is some form of distraction, right? And what I mean by that is it may be beneficial when you're pressing, or whether it's a standing press or a bench press, to maybe put a band on the shoulder and have a friend kind of put some pressure on it. So basically, kind of like this. See the shoulder? So band on the shoulder and put it on there and distract, pull back while you perform a press, right? So that distraction might help out and kind of give you some alleviation from that shoulder issue. That might be something that's worth considering. It might be a little bit awkward to set up, but certainly be worth it to give it a whirl and see if having some amount of distraction on that shoulder would provide you enough alleviation to kind of get some training or whatever. And then by training, increasing blood flow, thereby contributing to the healing of whatever the shoulder issue is. So those are some quick considerations that you may want to look at or try to see if it gives you any alleviation for the shoulder issue that you're experiencing. Obviously, this is probably something that we could go into in depth and talk, at great length about, but kind of a quick sound bite type of a deal. I think those are some quick things that you consider and try when considering whatever AC joint issue that you may be experiencing. And then, obviously, if the problem is much worse than, any of these things are able to kind of alleviate, I would say, see a doc, get some imaging, figure out what's going on with the shoulder. I take joint issues very, very seriously. So I'm willing to kind of tweak and play with a few things in the gym or at home to see if I can find a way to work around what the issue is. But if it's a big enough problem or if it's a significant enough issue, I don't even play with joints. Go see a doc, get it figured out, obviously provided that you have the health care to be able to do so. But if you have it available, absolutely utilize it.
Yeah, I will say one more thing, like if you go to a chiropractor for adjustment, that's fine. But just make sure you follow up with correctives, because if they manipulate and put things back to where they need to be, you need to make sure and strengthen that area to keep it like that instead of just letting it revert back.
Yeah.
So talk to them, do a little bit of research, talk to some people, figure out what you need to do, and just stay diligent on that, and just make sure you're getting the most out of your money if you're spending that to go to a specialized visit.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, guys, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the chat box below. I'll be sure to respond. I appreciate the questions coming through, guys, so that's very nice of you to give us an opportunity to be able to try to provide some feedback and input to help out with your specific issues. Anyway, guys, I think that's it right now. I appreciate you guys checking the video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any... Well, where do I need that one? I'm going to cut that piece out. We're going to edit. Yeah. It's going to edit like crazy. Anyway, remember, no matter what it is you think you can't do or the things that are holding you back from what you want to do, train despite. You either find an excuse or you find a way, guys. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you in the next one.